Hey everybody, it's Joel Williams and Chase Elleby and Piper Williams here today to visit with you and talk a little bit about dog bite cases and when you can bring them, who to bring them against, and kind of what can be recovered. So we're going to limit it to the state of Georgia because this is one of those topics where the laws of your state, though sometimes the laws of your specific city or county can play into whether you can recover or not. So why don't you take it away, Chase, and I'll put a vice grip on this.
I know.
Crazy puppy.
She's a vicious dog. So right, generally speaking, anytime someone's been bit by a dog, we always investigate to see whether or not there's a claim, right? So the person who you sue or who the claim is going to be made against, most oftentimes than not is going to be the owner, right? It happens in a neighborhood, dog gets out, bites a neighbor, bites a kid, whatever it might be, you're going to be bringing a claim against the owner of that dog. And that claim is almost always going to be covered under that homeowner's insurance policy, renter's insurance, whatever it might be. Obviously, auto wrecks have auto insurance, dog bites have homeowner's insurance claims. So that's where the claim is going to be brought most of the time. Now, I've had dog bite cases where it's an animal shelter or a rescue facility. Anytime there's another person that's responsible to take care of a dog and the dog bites or attacks someone, then they are potentially liable for a claim.
Yeah. And there's only certain situations where you can have a successful claim, right? Bringing a claim and having a successful claim are two totally different things. But at least in Georgia, there's a few different things you have to prove in order to bring a successful claim against the dog owner. The first one being, and the most common being, you usually have to prove that the dog has prior dangerous propensities. Some people think it's the one bite rule, but that's not necessarily true. Like, the dog doesn't have to have had an event in the past where they bit somebody, but it can be sufficient if you can show that they've displayed dangerous propensities. So maybe when somebody walks by the house, they go out rah, 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 and act threatening. Maybe they've attempted to bite somebody before and the owner knows we need to properly restrain this dog. But it's basically something to show prior knowledge of the dog owner of the dog's dangerous propensities. So for example, Piper here, she'd lick you to death. I had a boxer before that, like, if you were a male and you walked in my house, like, I needed to lock him up in a room because he didn't like strangers coming into the house. But I had that knowledge, and had he bitten somebody, I probably would have been in deep trouble, or at least my insurance company would have been.
Right, exactly. In dangerous propensities, some people say vicious propensities. If you know about the dog having vicious propensities, then yeah, you can be liable. But another thing to be aware of, that if you're even careless with the dog, then that vicious propensity can be sort of imputed to that dog. And by that, what I mean is, like Piper, sweet little girly dog over here, but if she were to get out and not have a leash and were to go and attack someone, not that she's going to attack someone, but just not having a leash and being out running free, then it's going to be imputed on the owner that dog has vicious propensities, even though, say, Joel didn't know that Piper would go and attack someone. Simply by violating a leash law or a leash ordinance and letting the dog go out and attack or bite someone, you can be held responsible for that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at. When it sometimes comes down to local ordinances and local laws, because even within the state of Georgia, different cities and different counties have different laws regarding leashes and dogs. But if an attorney or the person that's bitten can show that particular city's leash law was violated, you may not even have to show those prior dangerous propensities.
Correct. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's the main thing. And, a lot of times people want to know, well, what's my case worth if a dog has bitten me? And that can run the gamut. I mean, huge gamuts, because sometimes you may have just a superficial wound and the case may not be worth a whole lot of money if there's no complications. We've had some dog bite cases where there was a bite, and then there was an infection, and people had to get PICC line antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. And of course, those cases are going to settle for, much higher dollar amounts. Other things to consider when you're talking about damages is if it's like a mauling or a severe attack where somebody's got permanent scarring, especially if it's in the facial region or on a child or anything like that. Those are things that can really move the needle on what the case is likely to settle for, what a jury would award.
Right, and most of the time, most all the dog bite cases I've had at least are almost always children, right? And one thing to keep in mind is that in bringing a claim, if you had to file a lawsuit, for instance, the parents are the ones that are going to be responsible for the medical bills, and they're the ones that have to bring that claim for the medical bills, whereas the child can bring the claim for pain and suffering by way of their parent. So that's another thing to consider. Another thing I want to touch on too, because we're talking about the damages and infections and PICC lines and things like that, at least in Georgia and in the county where we live, which is Cobb County, anytime there's a dog bite, it's almost always going to be investigated by the animal control, right? And if the owner can't produce records to show that the dog has been vaccinated, then they almost always take the dog, quarantine the dog to make sure there's no rabies. But I've had clients who didn't know that, or didn't know whether or not the dog had been vaccinated for rabies, had been bitten, and then they're having to get the rabies, injections and things like that in the hospital. So the damages can really tick up if you're worried about rabies as well. So
yeah, all in all, it's all about showing either the violation of a law or prior knowledge of dangerous propensities on the part of the dog owner. Dog bite cases can be really sad because most people really love their dogs. I mean, we run into some situations where it's a dog that's chained to the tree and being mistreated, and it's probably not it has nothing to do with the dog. He's just been mistreated his whole life. It's the owner's fault that he or she is acting that way to begin with. But anyway, most people love their dogs, and sometimes when their dog takes a bite out of somebody, it's a sad situation on both ends. But if you're the person that was bitten through no fault of your own, you do have a right to seek reimbursement for medical bills and pain and suffering and things of that nature. So anything else you think we need to add about dog bites?
No, I think we've covered it.
Okay.
I think Piper's ready to take a nap.
There she goes. She's done. She's like, this video is over, buddy. All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this video. We hope it's been helpful to you. If so, give us a thumbs up. Maybe tell Piper her pink toenails that my girls painted in the comment section are super pretty and all of that good stuff. But next week we will see you for a video where we'll discuss what happens if the other driver in a car wreck lawsuit claims that they're not at fault or they deny fault.